there's a reason why we are attracted to all of these things, meaning natural sciences, religions, the humanities, what have you. Everything comes from this original source where we had to look inside in a shamanic way, have a shaman or do it ourselves, to have this sort of epistemological pipeline to get the primordial knowledge in order to survive, fight or flight, or construct a weapon or whatever. Use every little capacity that we have, and we still have them. And the connection is still there. It's easy.
Hello and welcome to the Spirit Box podcast, where we explore folklore, magic, the world of the spirits, and everything in between. In this episode of Spirit Box, I'm joined by the multi-talented Carl Abrahamsson, a photographer, a writer, a filmmaker, and a magician deeply embedded in the world of esotericism. We discuss his latest book, Meetings with Remarkable Magicians, Life in the Occult Underground, which explores his encounters with some of the most fascinating figures in contemporary esotericism, offering unique insights into their practices, philosophies, and influence on modern occult culture, or occulture. Carl shares his creative journey from his early influences, shaped by the influence of avant-garde art and music, to his academic work on Aleister Crowley's influence in cinema, specifically the work of Kenneth. He provides insights into his experiences with notable occult figures, including his time with the Church of Satan and Anton LaVey, and his connections with the English singer, songwriter, musician, poet, performance artist, Genesis P. Orridge. In the Plus show, we delve into the role of artists as vessels for magical currents, the impact of psychedelic experiences on art, and the necessity for holistic approaches to the challenges of the modern world. Along the way, we touch on everything from the power of old films and the influence of old great pieces of art, to the importance of trusting one's inner voice. We also explore the evolving landscape of occult publishing, the mainstreaming of occult thought, and the importance of creativity as a means for self-discovery. So, join us for a wide-ranging conversation on magic, creativity, and the ever-changing nature of the occult underground. And if you want to hear the Plus show, as ever, it's very easy. Go to the link at the bottom of the show notes, click on the link 3 and come join the Patreon. It's that simple. You'll get this show and a back catalogue of 4+ years worth of Spirit Box, bonus content, all kinds of stuff. There's literally double the amount on the Patreon. Equally, if online communities aren't your thing, then in the same link tree you can grab a link to pick up a copy of my book, Song of the Dark Man. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Let's get on with the show. Carl Abrahamsson, it's a real pleasure and an honor to welcome you to Spirit Box. So, for those people out there who aren't maybe familiar with your work or less so, could you introduce yourself and tell the people a little bit about yourself and your work?
Right, I'll certainly try. I think a long time ago, sort of late teenage years, I became very interested in, the occult, hocus pocus, as you do, and then tried to figure out whether it was just like a, passing fancy or something substantial to it in terms of this transformative potential that it promises, And I found that, yeah, absolutely, there was something there, and of course, then I had attractions to certain energies or spectrums or whatever you want to call it, resonances basically. And I decided early on to just follow my intuition and follow those resonances, and as I later call it, resonances, on my path, so to speak. That has also led me to becoming creative quite early on. I've always written a lot, and that was my only formal training to become a journalist. I've also always taken photographs, made films, and made music. And it's been great fun, not good career-wise, but great fun. And I think that for me, it's always been part of this same path in a way, in that I can discover things about myself through these creative efforts. So it's not only about the hocus pocus, but it's like a gel. when these things merge. And I guess that's what you could call an occultural approach, which is something that I've taken as a key term to my own work in a way. And it's just been, I guess snowballing might be a too strong a word, but it has become so integrated in my path that I simply cannot do anything else. And it's been good. Now it is sort of a career to be who I am. And yeah, it's very exciting. And I think what I do most of all is just write. I love to write. And I feel that I'm at the point in my life now where I've passed through 2 times Saturn cycles, that it's time to give something back. I feel sort of saturated in a way. And hence the book Meetings with Remarkable Magicians, which is like the first step to pay back by telling my story, hopefully in not only sharing information, but also inspiration, that it is possible to lead a very magical life as long as you're, honest about what you're feeling and, finding these resonances, you have to go with them. Otherwise, you'll be sad.
Yeah, I like that. The whole kind of the way creativity and the occult or magic seem to be intertwined is really key. I think when you people step into kind of a magical practice or their life becomes more enchanted. Do you feel like did one kind of predate the other, like, or were they always kind of hand in glove for you?
I think that the creative stuff came first because before I became like a full-blown intellectual, meaning taking in written material and movies and music and stuff like that and processing it via a specific filter. I was already creative in the sense that I like to draw, right? In school, I also like to write in school, and that was pre-intellectual times. So I think that concept of weaving your own world, be it, only for like 10 minutes when you're drawing something or writing something, it is a special place where you're like undisturbed and you are tasting this, I would, say miraculous thing where things come. Where do they come from? What is it that makes me formulate these words that I write in my little school notebook or in my drawing pad, So that I think was the key thing, and that led to a love of comic books, and films, of course, and later on music. And I was really immersed in this. I wouldn't say fantasy world, but in other people's fantasies that they were strong enough to convey, to us consumers. And I really loved that. And I felt that that resonated very much with me. And then, of course, as you grow up, you tend to find certain aesthetics or approaches in whether it's writing or making movies or whatever that sort of resonate more with you than others, and that was the case with me. And my parents were very cultured, offered a kind of a bouquet just in the home, and that affected me in the sense that it wasn't all mainstream. It was kind of experimental, avant-garde art stuff. And then when I could formulate my own, I wanted to move away from it. But that's the way you work with parents, like you're attached to some kind of invisible rubber string. So you move away from it, but then you sort of bounce back. And that's, where I ended up. It's just like I used my contemporary avant-garde, the goings on, and integrated that as my fodder. And as you know, at that time, let's say around early 80s and the industrial revolution of industrial music, and it was so filled with references. It was a very intellectual thing where we went from the emotional outburst of teen angst in punk and then made it into something else that had references to art history, but also, as we know, to a lot of occultism. And that, I think, was the main gateway for me, realizing that, whoa, there's an interesting world here where people are making these creative things, but they're inspired by all this hocus pocus stuff. And that was like very, very formative. And at that point, now we're talking early to mid 80s, I had already started making my own fanzines, first with for comic books, and then with rock and roll and thrash culture, and then later on those efforts turned into the Fenris Wolf, that actually came out the first issue in 1989.
Oh,
And
wow.
then, by then I was already active in Topi, and was sort of sniffing at the OTO and my satanic interest, and it was like this hodgepodge or potluck of occult strains in my overheated post-teenage mind, in a way.
But fantastic. I always love hearing a kind of where the seeds for kind of these arcs in our lives come from. Like when I think back into my youth, some of the formative ideas and kind of directions that I went in, a lot of it came from comic books.
Yeah.
Like I mean, people always talk about kind of like the big ones in terms of like Alan Moore and Grant Morrison. But there were some really early like early 80s, late 70s comics, like Epic Illustrated was an American one, which was just astonishingly wonderful art. And it was one of those things when I was a kid reading through them, I wouldn't really grasp the story, but
Yes, exactly.
I knew there was something there, that I was drawn to. Like metal, what was it called?
Metal Hurlant, heavy metal in the
Metal Hurlant. Yeah.
No, exactly. It was the same for me also. I love that, the French approach where you had these dirty comics. They were beautiful, still naked, no problem.
Yes.
Woven in with weird, violent science fiction and splatter. And, I love that. And of course, I think Möbius' work with Jodorowsky, for instance, was seminal, like literally fantastic. And of course, the American rendition through Heavy Metal magazine, that was formative for me. I was done with it, I think, when Alan Moore and the others came, in a way. I'm a little bit too old for that. But those, Richard Corben, the Poe adaptations, and it's just like, wonderful way again of taking a heritage of old style horror and science fiction and turning it into this mesh with underground comics sensibilities, when there's no censorship and there's references to sex and drugs and whatever, rock and roll. And it was very, very important for me. Absolutely.
And like in your resume, you've got film work, you've got photography. Was that where that kind of first, say, like that kind of visual intelligence started to come from? From.
I think so. My parents were very much into art. My mother worked at an art gallery, and just loved art basically, and also they loved movies. So there was like going to the movies, watching movies on TV, lots of art on the walls, and I think that affected me also in terms of assigning meaning to images, to the image. In their case, it was a lot of abstract art. So you had a kind of a, breaking open the head in that sense. It's like, what is the meaning of this?
Right.
Because it's not a figurative hunting scene or something like that. So I think, exposure is very important. You're exposed to things. And then I was, I wouldn't say that I was a loner, but I felt I could certainly interact socially with kids at school and stuff. But I did prefer, for instance, in the equivalent of high school, to hang out all my free time at the Stockholm Cinematheque. And that was like my first schooling in movie history.
Right.
And like almost every day going there and seeing two shows. So again, I immersed myself in the stuff that I initially found fascinating and inspiring. And I think I've always been like that, also in the sense, you could call it journalistic work, right? I'm inspired by someone, interested in someone, then I make an interview, for instance, to become friendly, and then I want to relay, I want to sort of repackage. And that is extra important now, I think, when I am now like a generational point where there are new generations who are hungry for fodder. They might be, seduced by their contemporary stuff, but there's also this concept of lineage, of moving a spirit along, that stuff, and I find that very, very important. So that again is why I'm working so much with it being a kind of a meta magician,
Gotcha.
in a way.
And your new title, Meetings with Formidable, Remarkable Editions. I can't read my own writing here. Your book release is in Watkins next month.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I believe it's on the 27th. Mm-hmm. That can be checked out. But it's at end of February at Watkins in London.
Yeah. So one of the things I found kind of really interesting, like reading about this book, is that you've managed to kind of be a linking factor between all these, as you say, kind of all these remarkable magicians.
Mm.
Like that's extraordinary in itself. Like to find yourself to build relationships, to have access to these significant cultural figures, not just in our culture, like certainly beyond. What do you think it is that has allowed you to achieve that?
Yeah, I think I'm still asking myself that question, and of course, part of that, I mentioned the 2 times Saturn. My second Saturn return just happened, and I wanted, as I was about to leave that, wanted to formulate in a kind of an autobiographical way.
Right.
And it's not really, it's an autobiography that focuses on the magic and the occultural stuff. And that was also a conscious choice because, I could have written a lot more about, cultural expressions and stuff like that. But I felt, again, that there is such a thing as a baton, and you take the baton and, as they say, you run with it, and I feel very much that I have the baton here. It's on my messy desk that fortunately you can't see. And I can't explain, why these things happen. You could apply, psychological approach or a chance or luck or whatever. I think it could be a mix, why all these things happen. And I do write about certain chronological events that facilitated meetings, facilitated openings. And I do like an expression that Bob Colacello said. He was the editor of Andy Warhol's Interview magazine and part of that factory crew and stuff. And someone asked him what it was like to be among the, socialites of New York or whatever it was, famous art people. And he said that Andy brought me in through the door the first time as a guest, but it was my own doing that I was welcomed back in a way. And I think that I used to think that maybe the Fenris Wolf, which happened in '89, was kind of a door opener in a way,
Right.
maybe. But it was so fresh when this first burst happened, and I think that working with Topi, being really good friends with Jen Sespi Orridge, that was a great thing. Jen liked to be that kind of spider in the web and connect people, and that it really helped me. I'm forever grateful for that. And and that led to, for instance, making that White Stains record about Jane Mansfield's relationship with LaVey, and Jen said, you should send this record to LaVey. He doesn't like rock and roll, but he might think it funny. And then LaVey wrote me a wonderful letter back, making me a member of the Church of Satan. And of course, okay, I have the chance, let's go to California. And at the same time, I had also been working at Stockholm University, writing my thesis about Aleister Crowley's influence in the films of Kenneth Anger. So I had another nepotistic little contact that I didn't know if it was going to happen, but I met LaVey in San Francisco. It was totally mind-blowing. And then he said, one of the last meetings on that trip, that I just spoke to Kenneth on the phone and told him that you're an okay guy and he would like to see you in Hollywood, day after tomorrow. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll run with that.
That's so cool. That's just so
cool. Yeah, and then it just sort of happened, and then you become like Mr. Magic in a way. in tiny Sweden, and I was very vocal about it, so people knew about that. That led to some other synchronicities, and then I think it just snowballed because now we're in a time where there is a lot of occulture. It's occulturation. Occult things are becoming more mainstream. It wasn't quite like that when I grew up and formatted myself. So in a sense, there was a lot more glamour in being occult, and I
Right.
was also de facto a Satanist. Who was not metal, but who dressed correctly and spoke eloquently and could talk to media, and it was so odd, in a way,
Right.
but it did have some kind of glamour, I could tell early on,
Mhm.
and that led to even more of the same, and some things were not of interest to me, but other things were, and led to, lifelong friendships. Like this coming weekend, I'm starting a 4-session class about Kenneth Anger, based in part on my documentary I made with him, and again, weaving in his thelemic approaches to filmmaking, and it's just like, it's not repeating myself, is repackaging it for a new generation, so I
Right.
feel that it's part of my work in a way of having this baton, and it's not only about repackaging their stuff for a new generation. I became so filled with stuff from the darkly satanic to the psychedelically trippy via Jen, and the thelemic connections via my own OTO work, but also via Anger in a way, and other strains. And so they're all like, made me pregnant in a way. And at times I didn't know what the hell should I do with this. I can't help. I can't isolate. I can't stratify things that have meant so much for me. So I think what is happening now is some kind of synthesis going on, which I called the the no hand path. Instead of the left hand path and the right hand path, it's the no hand path, which is kind of a Taoist concept. And I have this thing called source magic, which is basically having a shamanic approach, going
Mhm.
back to roots, basically, stripping away unnecessary terminologies and denominations in a way. So I think I am slowly, gradually formulating something of my own that contains all of these things. But that is the responsibility. You have to, formulate your own stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've been listening to a lot of your interviews and reading your articles in preparation for catching up. Um, and you mentioned about this kind of like a return to kind of a primal,
Hmm.
like a primal self and a magical expression
Yeah.
of that. So, and in terms of how I guess you're being so creative and having kind of you're well versed in numerous different artistic endeavors and styles. How do you think this is going to manifest? What are your early thoughts?
I think it's going to be more of the same, but with perhaps a more homogeneous umbrella.
Right.
Because when you're young and you're hungry and you're curious, you're trying things out, and if you love music, you want to have a band. That might not mean that you're a musician, but at least you're trying it out.
Yeah.
And if you can't make it in rock and roll, then maybe try something else that is maybe more experimental or even classical. And I think that I've always looked at these creativities and creative expressions as magical outlets. Like early on, I decided that no expression should be without intent, and I don't mean, in a dogmatic sense. In the beginning was very much, blatant thelema in the vocals, in the lyrics. But that's childish in a way. But now I feel that uh, with the books about magic, they are of course thematic, right? So they are in my own voice resynthesizing things, and they are what I call they're making me meta magical because I am a magician. I write about magic, that makes perfect sense. But there's also things like the documentary film series that I call An Art Apart, which is basically conversations and interviews with artists of different disciplines, and that's not specifically occult magical, but their process is very magical in the sense that they, almost alchemically transform things. They make something out of something else, or even some make something out of nothing. And that's fascinating. And it ties in with this primordial process of human survival connected to a shamanic awareness, where, there's a reason why we are attracted to all of these things, meaning natural sciences, religions, the humanities, what have you. Everything comes from this original source where we had to look inside in a shamanic way, have a shaman or do it ourselves to have this sort of epistemological pipeline to get the primordial knowledge in order to survive, fight or flight, or construct a weapon or whatever. Use every little capacity that we have. And we still have them, and the connection is still there. It's easy. I think that's one of the takeaways of eavesdropping at shamanic classes is like, wow, it was so simple. It's not really that hard as people think. And that's in a way, I think the fault, or we can blame occultism per se for that, because in the Western sense, it's so unnecessarily complex. It's so unnecessarily symbolized. Whereas in fact, the connection to a shamanic state of consciousness is actually quite easy to reach, and you don't need to be high. Go with the drum, go with an internal journeying, and basically, and here's a thing that I want people to take away: is like, trust whatever it is you're finding on the inside. That, unfortunately, as we know, is something that we're not taught to do or be. Like, oh, it's just fantasy, it's just daydreaming, or a flight of fancy. But it's actually whatever comes from the inside has a message.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what you come up with that. Like, it absolutely jumped out of me. What you were saying, it was one of those. I was like, "Ooh, I feel that in my guts."
Yeah. No, but it's because we all have it. It's like, if I could, what if I had like 8 billion little hands to knock everybody's head? Hello, wake up. It's very easy. Just do this, and it's non-denominational. It's not religious in that sense. It's just open up and see what you got inside, and trust whatever is there. And that's, I guess, is the only kind of a message I have. I would say I'm a Thelemite. I got tired of the tendencies at fundamentalism, tendencies at Thelemic fundamentalism that exists today in the various environments. But that doesn't take away the key message. I think it is important for each and everyone to really try to find what is the purpose and meaning of their lives. And anyone who goes against that is, is not a good person. And anyone who tries to encourage it is very good, because it goes along with nature in a way. If you pluck a flower even to put in a vase and enjoy it, you're not doing the flower service, because you might cut short its potential to sow further seeds for even more flowers. And I think that's an apt metaphor or image for humans too.
Right.
Stratification of whatever kind should be natural. It shouldn't be enforced by political concepts or philosophical concepts. That's a human error, I would say.
Yeah, and we seem to be very prone to that. Like, we drift into orthodoxy super quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's. I totally get what you're talking about there, because it's a weird thing, because we're essentially on the fringes of society in these areas of interests. And like, when you think back in like our spiritual predecessors, the magicians and witches of old, literally were on the periphery of civilization, and then somehow orthodoxy creeps in. It's a really weird, it's a strange dynamic.
Yeah, But I think all we can do is accept it, because
Mm.
I don't think that there is, for instance, a benevolent God that will suddenly, enlighten, illuminate everybody,
Yeah.
or nor will there be rebels who could dose 8 billion people with LSD and everyone would be happy. It's a wonderful thought, but it's not going to happen. So in that sense, I think gradual work on refining yourself.
Mhm.
That's really all we can do.
Right.
And again, avoid demagogia and become, fundamentalist. I think inspiration mixed with a bit of information is the
Right.
best way to do things. And that's why I'm so happy about the inevitability of the massive occulturation that's going on,
Hmm.
because it's like beyond a few occurrences and few TV series of mentions of Hocus Pocus. It really is, the floodgate is open, and I think that's because we need it. In
Hmm.
that sense, I do believe in Jung's concept of the collective unconscious. It's like, if we want to survive, we need to change certain things, and if the overall control system is inert, happy to push everyone over the edge, then there needs to be a counterforce or a resistance coming from the depths, looking at these initial, basically shamanic mechanics of looking inside for answers and then
Hmm.
working together in the tribe to solve the problems, instead of living in denial and saying that there is no problem, because that
Hmm.
leads to inertia and that leads to death.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that like rigidity, mental
Yeah,
rigidity is hugely detrimental. But this is where it kind of, I guess, loops back to creativity for me. When
mm,
I kind of, looking at your work, where you've been so fluid to turn your hand to music, to writing, to film, to photography. You know, it seems like, and maybe you had that naturally, or it might be something you've developed, but you had that fluidity, and you know from the outside looking in, it might suggest like a kind of a fearlessness of like, no, I can jump in and do that. And generally, people's internal world are actually, crippled with a fear, but they go for it anyway. Um, is that just something kind of innate in you, that kind of fluidity and willingness to try, irrespective of what might
yeah,
happen?
I think so. I think so, because there are some things I do and many things that I don't. And there's a reason for that. I would love to, for instance, um, you know, like I would love to play the piano fluently, or an musical instrument of a classical kind. But I'm not going to. That I've decided I'm not going to devote time and energy to that, because first of all, other people can do it better. It is kind of. I don't think there's anything wrong with indulgence. On the contrary, I think it's good. But for me to reallocate time and energy to learning that, when I have so much work
Mm.
to do, I'm happy to stay with the things that I feel that I'm comfortable and fairly competent with, which means that I mostly do writing, and then photography is kind of a help, but in a different way with the writing. It's
Right.
just juggling images. That the images are important to me, and making music is very much like a balm, something soothing, completely unintellectual for me. Working with sounds and stuff like that, and filmmaking is again, an extension or a heritage from the journalistic work, I would
Right.
say.
Right.
I have made one like narrative film and several art films, but they're often tied in with music, actually, and so they're almost like extensions of the musical process. So I don't know. I think also many of these pursuits, it sort of seems like I'm doing on my own, but that's not the case. I love to be in context. I love to be in collaboration. And for instance, my I've done a lot of solo music, and it's been great. But I do enjoy more working together with people. And I would say my closest, most intimate, and long-term musical partner died of COVID, in 2022, and that was kind of an eye opener or an ear opener in a way, because I haven't really found my way back to that kind of, because I haven't really had anyone to collaborate with.
Mm.
I've made lots of music together with my wife, where she is the vocal partner, and I make soundtracks or music for that kind of performance. But previously, I have worked with, making actual music together with a few people, and that's been very, very interesting. And filmmaking is also kind of a collaborative effort, and writing not so much. It's a very private, as you know.
Mm.
Comes from inside, and you then later when it's about publishing or stuff like that, then you can communicate. But hopefully, people won't interfere so much in what you've written. So I'm lucky in that sense. That doesn't happen so often. So I think, yeah, there are things I would like to try, but I don't think I will, because at this point in life, I'm so content and happy with the way things are flowing. And I don't, people say that, actually you should learn a new language or an instrument because, stimulates the brain and stuff like that. Maybe so. But I feel very stimulated every day by the
Right.
work I'm doing. I think it has to do with the fact that it's yeah, vast field in itself, where
Mm.
there's so much historical, there's so much going on now, there's so much, future stuff that can all be contextualized. That, I love occulture. I
Mhm.
really do in that sense, because it can be so many different things.
Yeah.
It's not just a pun, it's a real thing.
Yeah. No, I like that. So tell us about the new book, um, and what I'd love to what I'd love to pull as a thread
Mm.
is because you're meeting some extraordinary people, and um, you're there with them. You're in some cases you're doing documentary work with them. But I suppose when you meet these kind of like big characters or cultural icons in some cases, like, it must change your practice, your outlook. You know.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's inevitable, but that goes for important people in your life,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's
whether
true.
they're
Yeah.
famous or not.
Mm.
Could be some relative that you have a good relationship with that becomes like a mentor. I think it's basically mentorship,
Okay.
because it's not like you go to Hogwarts or magic school and that you have lessons. But I feel that I've learned a lot from all these people. By being there, talking and doing things, and just hanging out and vibing, as the kids say now. But most of the stuff that I took away from it was like between the lines, right? It was not intentional schooling, but a mix of inspiration and seeing modus operandi, how they are doing things, and trying to figure out why also. That's a good school.
Hmm.
And I felt with I think the relationship with Genesis, there was such a long and fruitful relationship between basically 1986 and 2020, where we made musical projects together and traveled, and we made the book Sacred Intent, and the documentary called Change Itself. So there was always like these projects where we tried to figure out, for instance, what the hell happened in the Topi days. And then we talked about that, and saw what was good and what was not so good. And whereas LaVey was more like a wonderful showman. If you were welcome in there and again and again and again, then you really did have a great time. Where he was in a way like a stage magician. I'm not saying that he played a part, but he
Yeah.
performed. He was
Hmm.
performative. Whereas Jan, of course, could be, that sometimes, but most often just normal Jan hanging out and being relaxed. And with LaVey, it was more like, I'm going to perform for you in these various ways, and I'm doing this in order to secure my legacy in a way.
Right.
And I write about that in the book, and also specifically in the LaVey book I wrote a few years back, about his way of disseminating knowledge and concepts and stuff like that. It was very much between the lines, and he was so innovative. He was really like a magician's magician, in the sense that he didn't carry on in a specific tradition. You could say maybe the satanic, whatever that means, but he came up with his own concepts. He wove in his own um, proclivities and fetishes, and turned that into magical tools. And that was remarkable. Very, very, and also wove in psychology, which was remarkable. And in a way, Jen did the same thing by synthesizing, Austin Osman Spare with the beats. It's a fantastic thing. And I think that's a key um, uh, trademark, or a key trait, or a quality in what I would call master magicians. And I think with Anger it was the same. I didn't have as intimate or close relationship with him, but I did feel that he wanted to impart or disseminate certain things. Absolutely.
Right.
And we did have contacts up until a few years before he was dead and dying. And it was very, very fascinating indeed. And in his case, he was working with the films as talismans, concretely for private purposes, but also to become this, ambassador of Thelema in a way, coming from the Los Angeles occult environment, being in a way mentored by Cameron, and then moving on into the world of him blooming and making his beautifully magical films, and becoming, Mr. Thelema in a way. And I think that they all had something unique, something that was very much tied in with creativity, and their creativity, because that's what filled them with joy, and that's what empowered them. And then they snuck in their intentions in those things and sent them out in the world. And I think that that's something I've learned from them. And then there have been other people too, and other areas of interest and resonance, like the Asian stuff, and but that was never on a similar kind of personal long-term level. That was
Right.
more like infusions that I chose to expose myself to. That sounded weird, but I also mean, it's like you open yourself up to a certain, energy or resonance, and you do become filled up with that, and that teaches you something, and that you can weave into your own magic web.
Yeah, that I really resonates, and it articulated beautifully. I often wonder. We touched on this a little bit. I often wonder about artists as a whole. Those people who are really on the cutting edge of something, a cutting edge of some new movement. Breaking down barriers. I think of like the Dadaist, the Cubist, like doing all this intriguing, stuff. And I start to think: is it like a form of possession? Are they driven by their daemon, or is there like a magical current that is working through them in a way that's not overt, like like in the sense of the contemporaries you're describing, where they have that intention and they're able to impart that into the creative output. But I mean, it's an idea, and I really kind of want to get your thoughts on it. I mean, some artists, obviously, big a silly statement, but are some artists, vehicles for a magical current, but it's completely unconscious and kind of unrefined, because they seem to have the impact. Like there's a price to pay for kind of working with these energies. It can physically drain bodies and all that kind of stuff. But you look at the work of like Francis Bacon. To me, I look at his art in particular. Like it seems so visionary, that he was tapped into something quite
Yeah.
chthonic, but
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, but use a vehicle for that.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely correct, and I think that there are different terminologies that you can use to try to
Right.
figure out these things. One is, of course, the occult, and you just use the word daimon, and you can use the other occult terminologies to describe these things, where you get possessed, and then you have you get a message, and you have to convey it. And if you're an artist, you work with your art to sort of perform and move that message along. That's one way of describing it. I tend nowadays to look at it very much like, again, like this overall occulturation process where things are going from the dark, the chthonic, the soil, and things need to come up to the surface to generate more oxygen, quite literally, for
Okay.
our survival, and more create more garden energy rather than concrete paving. So the image of the asphalt flower, in a way, I think is very, very beautiful and magical.
I like
Uh,
that.
and I think for me it has to do also with integrating more Jungian thought, and this thing where the collective unconscious is, it's not a cogitation. Some people, that's the unfortunate thing about today's art world and a new generation of artists. They are so intellectual, right? And they get taught at art school how to fend for yourself and how to market yourself because you're a commodity. And that's like missing the point. And usually what they create is not something that has longevity. It may have a market peak, but then it also will have an ebb. So I think that when these things happen, like Francis Bacon is a great example. It's not cogitation. He doesn't sit and sketch. Well, if I do this, it seems more perverse. Seems more psychic, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He just really opened himself up and created these incredible vistas that were part possession, yeah, obsession very much, and problems dealing with it, in terms of alcoholism and and getting high off the fumes of the turpentine or whatever he cleaned his um, brushes with. So yeah, and what comes through then? Where does it come from? Well, you can say, hey, it's from his unconscious, but isn't it also our unconscious? The way his images resonate so strongly, and isn't it kind of a fluke that weird paintings like that could become so successful?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it was open at that time. Call it a portal, call it whatever. Something like a pimple or a volcano in the collective unconscious moving to the crust, to the surface, and needing to explode in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the reason. I think that's also why things like, usually artistic movements. There are some key people, some pioneers, but in general, it is I would say a minor mass movement. It's something that needs to happen,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah. You're in London next month, and releasing the new book. If people are listening, what do you want to kind of take away for this new book? Like,
Well, I think I hope it's a good read in the sense that it should be fun to read, and it's sort of, whoa, he did this, and then a little bit of not the ordinary in a way. And I do think that I'm not trying to like sell anything or a particular philosophy, but I am hinting at what these meetings with these magicians have meant for me, and how also, I hope, how I've tried to synthesize it and make it my own, make my own dish out of these different ingredients. And I feel happy about it. I feel that I've done that. And I hope that the book can convey that spirit of taking whatever has influenced you, whether it's by proxy or real influx, and just turning it all into your own cauldron in a way, and then drinking, and then it will be nutritious. If you're only taking in fast food ingredients from third parties or even fourth or fifth parties, rehashings of rehashings, then it might not be so nutritious. But whatever feels close to you and inspiring to you, you should make your own stew, basically. That's what I've done. And that's what I think the book conveys. I hope so, anyway. That it's inspiring, not for people to emulate or do something exactly similar, but similar in spirit, to go out on this hero's journey in the Campbell sense.
Yeah.
Go on a quest. It's a real thing. People have done it for thousands of years. It's a real thing. Magic is real, and the hero's quest and the journey, or whatever you want to call it, it is a real thing, and it fills life with an extended, expansive sense of meaning, because it's all immersive. It's not about a career, which can be mental, cogitation, choosing, and it's not escapistic either. It's all of these things, and emotion and psychology, and just making sure you lead a good, interesting life.
Yeah, well, it looks absolutely fascinating, and like a really interesting work, and but also kind of pulling together all these kind of icons in occulture. I have to say, you look very cool on the cover, by the way. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. It's like, when was that? Like
That was in 1993, and it was taken at Coney Island, when it was still sort of like old Coney Island. There was still some old buildings and old rides and stuff like that left, and it was I was taken there by Peter Gilmore and Peggy Nadramia from the Church of Satan, and this picture was taken by Peter on a beautiful sunny day, and we had just had a wonderful time at a wonderful place.
That's very cool. It's been fabulous talking to you, Carl. You've really kind of inspired me, and I love how I see the world, and you see the importance of art in it, and then tying it back to this need for us to return to the primal. It really resonates, speaks to me on a number of levels, and I know will speak to so many of our listeners. So
Great.
thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. I see it. It's not a job. It's not my job, but it's my vocation.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. For those who may want to follow you or find out more about your work, where's the best place for them to do so?
I think there are. We have a few, presences. I think the best way in terms of constant news and what's really going on in terms of new books or stuff is thefenriswolf.substack.com. I can send you that link also.
Yeah,
it's basically the Substack of the Fenris Wolf Project. And also there's very simply carlabrahamsson.com. And then I have a Patreon together with my wife, which is patreon.com/Vanessa23Carl, Vanessa23Carl. I can send you those links so you have them.
Yes, that'd be fantastic.
No, those are the main things. And, then on all the social media platforms, I'm easy to find.
Great stuff. Well, Brent, thank you so much for coming on the Spirit Books.
Thank you very much. It's been great, and I hope to see you again in London.
Yes, absolutely. I'll definitely have to come and get a book signed.
Yep.
Wonderful. Wonderful stuff. I really enjoyed that conversation, and Carl's ability to turn his hand to so many different creative expressions is quite impressive, and it's very inspiring as well. So he's kind of given me I could catch the energy of excitement for film and filmmaking off him, really. So I'm going to try and pursue that, I think. I know I've been whittering on about it at various intervals over the last while. But I think that's starting to snowball now for me energetically, so we'll see how that materializes. Anyway, that's far and enough nebulous waffle for me to end the show on. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm Dara Mason. You've been listening to Spirit Box. Take care and talk soon.